So for a rebrand, sometimes it's just refreshing the look and feel of an organization, right? You might want to modernize the logo, change a tagline. It might be elements of a rebrand. For us, a rebrand meant truly rebranding. We worked on the brand from soup to nuts.
Before she became Chief Marketing Officer at Breakthrough T1D, formerly JDRF, Pam Morrisroe built a strong career in the corporate advertising world. Then one day, she asked herself a simple but very important question.
Am I doing work that has meaning to me?
So it was time for a pivot, one that required a lot more dedication than anticipated.
I went through 16 interviews.
1-6.
And I think there's good reason for that.
What could possibly be the reason? Let's find out. I'm Camila Renta, and this is Impact After Hours, a show about pursuing a life of impact on and off the clock. Pam, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Camille. It's great to be with you.
So you've worked in marketing in New York City for a while now, is that correct?
Yes, my entire career has been in New York City in marketing. Most of my career was at ad agencies in New York City.
Have you seen the show Mad Men?
Oh, yes, from start to finish. And actually, they were a client of mine once, which was really fortuitous as well. They were a client of mine, and we did a takeover in Grand Central Station, actually, when they were promoting the show. And
I absolutely did not know that.
Yes, I know. We didn't talk about that, but they were a client.
We didn't talk about that.
And we recreated the show through, we hired a bunch of actors who were dressed sort of in period Mad Men, and recreated that in Grand Central because they had done a full media takeover of the subway system when the show was really getting popular, so it all came back around full circle.
Yes, the show is super iconic. And well, knowing that, I don't know if this changes, your response to my question, but what did you think of the show? Did you find any parallels between what they were depicting in that series and what you were working on at that time?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. There was so much reality to that show. I think I'm fortunate that I entered the advertising world when maybe the way women were treated in that show was not as prevalent, but so much of how that show was brought to life was accurate in terms of the pitching of new business and the creative process and where ideas come from. The account-client relationship, my background was in account management, so I loved it because so much of it was real, but obviously it depicted a time where maybe bad behavior was a little more acceptable than when I was in the industry.
Yes, and for our audience who, if they've not seen the show or they do not know about the show, it was set in the 1960s, I believe. So it was a different era, different period of time. So you have a ton of background and experience in marketing. You have worked with such big brands. I think Ford, American Express, Volkswagen, really household names, and then moved into the nonprofit sector. What drove that shift for you, Pam?
Well, we were coming out of COVID, and it had been a really difficult time in the ad world at that time. You know, we were making a lot of cuts, unfortunately. Business changed. How we ran our business changed. I had recently won a big piece of business for our New York office that the intent was going to be that was a full in-person event activation. And obviously with COVID, that changed immediately, and we had to change to a pure digital activation. What I learned through that process, though, was, am I doing work that has meaning to me? And at that time, it felt like the particular client I was working on, the work I was doing, I'm not sure it was meeting my needs from a mission perspective. So I started to look during that period, and I knew I wanted to go what we call client side. So I had been agency side for my entire career. And I hadn't had the client experience yet where I had worked on the client side. I had always represented clients. So those two things were important to me. Can I do more work with more purpose? And can I go client side? And I got very lucky in that I came across an opportunity where JDRF at the time, Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, was hiring a chief marketing officer. And at first I was a little nervous and I said, okay, I haven't been a chief marketing officer yet. I'm not sure I'm right for this role. But when I looked at the job description, I said, I can do this. They needed to restructure the marketing department. And they were really looking for somebody that had a full service marketing background, which I did. So I thought, okay, I'm qualified for this role. And I went for it and I got the job, which has changed my life in the last 5 years, truly.
Before we get into the whole process of you moving into Breakthrough T1D, I want to maybe get your advice, any lessons that you can share with young people who struggle to move into, let's say, the nonprofit world, social impact world. Maybe currently they're working a corporate job and they also struggle to find a cause. Any word of advice for them?
I love this question because I actually just spoke yesterday with a woman who is a creative director who I had partnered with for many years. And she is looking to do something similar. She wants to move from the advertising world into nonprofit, or we can call it sort of mission work, if you will.
Yes.
There's a couple of things. The first is I tell all my friends who are on the corporate side, on the agency side, you know more than you think you do. You have had the very best training ground to understand all facets of marketing. So that's the first piece of advice I give. Even if you've worked on CPG clients, on packaged goods, if you've worked on automotive clients, financial services clients, you have tremendous experience across the entire marketing funnel to know how to do that work. So that's the first piece of advice I give them. The second piece of advice I always give, and I just said this to this woman 2 days ago, is we're all telling human stories. That translates no matter where you are, and translates even more in the nonprofit world. So if you know how to tell human stories through the work you do, that work is transferable. And that's what I tell people.
And from a commercial lens too, right?
Yes.
What even more so in the nonprofit, in the social impact world.
100%. And like I said, yes, so those human stories translate completely to the nonprofit world, which is so important. And you just said something interesting about the commercial world. All of that experience, client management, if you work within a holding company, all that stakeholder management work is also transferable on the nonprofit side, where you have, a governing board, things like that. All that work and all that management is transferable. My dog just opened the door. I'm sorry.
No problem at all. We have a big dog too, Pam. Okay, speaking of your current job, you told me something when we first met that I could not forget. And that is, during the hiring process, you had to go through not one interview, not two interviews, not three. Can you please tell our audience?
I went through 16 interviews.
16.
And I think there's good reason for that. The first is I met many of our international board members. So many of my interviews were with various international board members. But I also think the board and my boss, who's our CEO, Dr. Aaron Kowalski, wanted to make sure that they got it right. I think in the past, they had hired people who might have had a communications background in nonprofit. And I think they were potentially looking for somebody who had more wide-ranging marketing experience. And I believe that's because they understood that a brand change might be on the horizon.
And Okay, so I want to walk us through that process. At any point, I know obviously these interviews were important, and they wanted to make sure that you were the perfect fit for this role. But how did you keep your cool? How did you stay motivated to, wake up and do another interview and then another interview? For those listeners who might actually be undergoing this same process because they're chasing this dream role.
Well, what I will say is everyone was lovely. They really were. They were really lovely to speak to. And also, for type 1 diabetes, every single person I spoke to, type 1 diabetes was personal to them. Either they had type 1 or a family member had type 1. So I think really they were just making sure that I was somebody who could understand what we were trying to achieve, could understand what our mission was. Obviously, I didn't know as much at that time. And they wanted to make sure I was qualified. And I think it was, so my advice is, it almost goes back to the advice I gave earlier. You know what you know. You have great experience. And everybody's a human. As my dad used to say to me, everybody puts their pants on the same way. So I thought about that when I went into the interview, and I tried to have the interviews, and I had human conversations. And I think that helped me prepare. I tried to think about it in that way.
And were you thinking about the end of that process?
I think it's funny, and maybe this is just my personality. I tried not to think too much about the end result as I was going through the process.
Oh, okay.
I wanted the role very badly, and I wanted to make sure I was doing the best I could through each step of the process. But I think that's how I thought about it. I'm going to take each step of the process one step at a time, because I imagined, and it turned out to be the case, that several people were interviewing for the role. So I wanted to not get my hopes up so much that I'd be devastated when it didn't happen. So I think I took each step one step at a time. And I would research. So for instance, I knew which board members I was meeting with. I would research their backgrounds. I would understand how long they were involved in the organization, but also the things they were passionate about. So I tried to take each interview, and also the staff members that I spoke to, I tried to take each interview one step at a time. I might have lengthened the process because what was not on the docket was for me to interview with people who would be reporting into me. That wasn't originally on and part of the process. And I asked to speak with a couple folks that I knew would be reporting to me. And I think that was so important because I really started to get a lay of the land of the organization before coming in.
Okay, Pam, you got me there, because that is, I think that's key, right? Like, you will be spending a huge amount of time. You will be pursuing this mission with a group of people, and you need to be on the same page. At some point you will agree, disagree. There will be challenges along the way. But I think you wanting to meet them made you, and that sort of initial conversations that you probably had with them made you realize, I'm in the right place, and hopefully this is for me. And
it also made me realize that I sensed that there had been some turnover in that role. There had been some changes, and they were probably looking for stability too. So I think for me, during that process of speaking to them, I wanted to make it clear to them that I would have their back, and that I'd be a partner, and that I would lean in.
Yes.
That I would do the hard work. So I'm really grateful that became interviews 15 and 16.
Yeah. And before we move on, have you contacted the World Guinness Book of Records?
No, I don't think. I hear this a lot. A lot of people have very lengthy interview processes now. I hear this a lot.
This is why I think the importance of hearing from people like you, Pam, who have gone through it and who have come out and who feel fulfilled and, privileged to be in this work and in this position. I think that's what we're trying to share with our audience, right? Because the job market is tough. I think it's getting tougher, frankly. So this is just us really helping them stay the course.
I would say don't lose hope. I think my first interview was in June, and I got the job in October.
Wow. Don't lose hope. Lesson of the day. As CMO of Breakthrough T1D, Pam, you mentioned earlier that there was a rebrand, which involved a name change.
Yes.
Before we get into that process, again, I feel like we're literally, you took us back COVID days, and then we went through the interview process with you, and now we're finally at Breakthrough T1D.
Mm-hmm.
Can you educate our listeners about what a rebrand is?
Sure.
What purpose does it serve? Because sometimes it does get a negative connotation. Like we hear, oh, we're rebranding, we're doing this and that.
Yeah, I think sometimes, because exactly what you said, Camille, I think some people most recently think of the Cracker Barrel rebrand, for instance, right? And I said, oh boy, I'm glad that didn't happen to us. And I shouldn't say that, but so for a rebrand, sometimes it's just refreshing the look and feel of an organization, right? You might want to modernize the logo, change a tagline. It might be elements of a rebrand. A lot of folks don't go through the step of actually changing the name. But we recognized that needed to be part of our rebrand process. So for us, a rebrand meant truly rebranding. It meant a name change. It meant evaluating our mission statement and understanding if it was resonating with the community.
Yes.
It was looking at our, I'll call it brand or strategy on a page. So we wanted to make sure how we talked about ourselves, our tone, our personality, how we were presenting ourselves was consistent and in line with what the organization stood for. It was also the full look and feel of the brand.
Yes.
So we worked on the brand from soup to nuts and how we spoke about ourselves. So we had a whole voice. So we did everything from soup to nuts. Sometimes you'll see just, like I said, a logo change, a color change, a tagline change, but we did everything. And the reason we did everything is because a few things. I think there was definitely recognition that the J in our name was standing in our way. So we were JDRF, which was a shortened version of the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. And juvenile diabetes is a medical misnomer. What we are working on is type 1 diabetes. So, and you know, the word juvenile can have a negative connotation. So it was a dated term. It didn't represent the disease we were representing. And I think that the organization had taken a let's call it a mini step about probably a decade and a half before to change Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation to JDRF. And what we did, the first thing we did was research, deep research. And we found that 36% of the type 1 diabetes community had no idea who we were. I think our organization, our board thought, if you have type 1 diabetes, you know our organization. And 36% had no idea who we were. And what we found through that data was that our name was confusing to people, and they did not know what the acronym stood for. So the first thing we did was deep data globally to say, do we have to make a name change?
Yes. Any advice for nonprofits, social impact organizations, maybe not of the size of Breakthrough T1D, that could use a rebrand, but are struggling to execute?
Yes. So I think the thing that worries people is it's expensive. And when you're a nonprofit, that is challenging. I will say that is true. There is a cost associated with doing things the right way. And if we were going to do this, we needed to do it the right way. So the first thing I would say is definitely make sure you have the budget, because I think it does take Sometimes it takes funds to make sure you do it the right way. But if you do it the right way, it will pay off in spades. And I can talk to you about that later. That has happened for us. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I realized on day one when I started this job how important our community is and how important our volunteers are. We have the most passionate base of volunteers that I have ever encountered with any organization I've been involved in. And I've heard that from my colleagues who've worked at other nonprofits, that this is the most passionate community base that exists in nonprofit. And I have no doubt about that. So I realized from day one that they needed to be involved in the process. So I set up a task force of volunteers who actually had marketing experience. So I found out who are the folks across the country who have deep marketing expertise that are really deeply involved in this organization that can play a role in this process from beginning to end. So I had about 8 people and that helped our community feel comfortable too. If they knew that Nick Bryan, who is a really incredible person in the marketing industry, if they knew he was involved in this process and they knew how involved he was in our organization, they would feel better to know that this is being handled the right way. So involving volunteers from the beginning and throughout the process was critical. And hiring the right agency. We worked with Siegel and Gale, who was just an incredible partner.
You talked about the payoff.
Yes.
What was that?
So the first thing we wanted to achieve is that we wanted the entire type 1 diabetes community to feel like they were part of this organization. About 50% of new diagnoses are in adults, which a lot of people don't know. They think it is just diagnosed in childhood. It's in adults. So the first payoff is we know through our data that we are reaching a much broader community. We know from where they're going on our website, from the resources that they're leveraging, that adults are very much involved in this community. The other thing that we've seen, and we watched this, we did predictive modeling to see how would engagement be, how would awareness be, would we have revenue fall off because of this name change and brand change? And in reality, we didn't. Our revenue has never been higher. We had our highest revenue ever for the organization this last fiscal year. So it actually did not have that effect. So by bringing in more people to the organization, it has helped us grow and it has helped them feel like they're part of this community, which is incredible.
Fantastic. Pam, you've given us so much wisdom already. I think it's time to lighten things up a little bit.
I love it though.
Yes, I know. I'm learning so much. And honestly, people who are listening or watching us on YouTube, this is free advice from Pam, who is such an expert, such a pro. And we are just so lucky to be hearing from you, Pam, and learning from your experience too. But I have a special round of questions for you, Pam.
Okay.
For our lightning round. Are you ready to play?
I am ready.
Okay, what is something you cannot get through the day without?
Coffee. I'm looking at it to my right, and I won't drink it because it will be another brand in the screen, but I can't get through the day without coffee.
Spoken like a true marketer, we shall not advertise other brands on this show unless it's an actual collaboration. What is the scariest thing you ever did that you don't regret?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, it was scary, but it was invigorating at the same time. With my older son, we flew a biplane, so it's a 2-person plane around Martha's Vineyard, so it was scary at first because I was leaving my other son on the ground. He was going to go up at the next flight, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is scary and adventurous. And am I putting us in danger? But then you get up and you see this landscape, which is just incredible and beautiful. So every second of it was worth it. And we landed and I was able to bring my other son up too.
Okay, if you could learn any skill instantly, like in The Matrix, what would it be?
In The Matrix?
Yes. Any skill at all, Pam. I know you are obviously very adept and such a marketing pro. Any skill at all that you have thought of that you currently don't have?
Well, I'm learning about this disease every single day. So I would say if I could retain, so I'm reading every day. I'm constantly reading about this disease every day. And as you can imagine, as the marketer, I'm blasted with messages about it on social media, right? So I would say, what are those skills when you're a speed reader and you can comprehend almost immediately?
Yes.
I think I would be a speed reader who could comprehend the details faster than I do now. I think I work pretty fast. I do work pretty fast, but I'd love in an instant to understand everything that I'm reading about.
That would be a very cool skill and something that I would want for myself.
Yeah.
Especially with at the speed of...
So it's like Uber speed reader, I think.
That can comprehend it.
With medical information.
Yes. So taking into account the decades of work that scientists have put in, right? But then all of a sudden, Pam...
That I get it immediately.
Yes, yes.
I spend it, which is great. I spend a lot of my weekends and my time reading as much as I can about the researchers that we're funding and the work that we're doing to support these researchers. And I find myself reading lines over and over again to make sure I really understand.
Definitely. So that would be very helpful.
Yes.
What is your favorite way to celebrate a victory?
So I love traveling, and I love traveling with my boys. I think that's one of my favorite things to do. They are, one is a young man, soon to be 21. Another one is 17. And watching them turn into these young men and seeing that their adventurous spirit is really fun. So for big events, for instance, when my older son graduated from high school, we went to Ireland and London, and we just had this incredible trip exploring. It's so fun to explore with them. That's how I love to celebrate.
And also kind of experiencing the different locations or places through their lens
is great. And they're guiding me. We just got back over the holiday break, over the holidays and into New Year's. We went to Paris, and it was so fun for them to guide me and say, here's where we're going on the metro. Or, you know, they saw something on TikTok, like this is a food place we need to go to. So I'm really loving them guiding me.
Okay, last question in this round. What is the most surprising thing you've learned recently?
I think that people are always willing to help. You know, I think, and I'm seeing this with my older son, I think it's certainly nerve-wracking to put yourself out there.
Yes.
And to make an ask. But I have found for the most part that people are willing to help. So I see young people reaching out to me all the time, and they seem very appreciative when I have the conversation or I give them advice. I would say just ask, because for the most part, people are willing to give that time. And if they can't, they won't. But for the most part, I see people are willing to give their time, their advice, their counsel. And I would say take advantage of that, because you can learn from everybody.
And also, you know, when we get bogged down by, of course, work emails, the complexity of our day jobs, and then you get like an email or a note or a message just asking for, you know, a coffee or just a quick chat, and they want to learn from you. They want to learn from your experience without anything else, without asking for anything else, is really a good, not just like break from, you know, the chaos of the work, but it's very fulfilling too, to be able to share your knowledge. I mean, Pam, we spent quite a bit of time learning from you today, and even personally for me, when people reach out to me and asking about, oh, how did you start your media company? You know, what led you here? And it's just you looking back.
It fills, I think you said it so nicely, it fills both cups. I hope that I'm providing some value to them but I get value out of that too. It does break up. It reminds me of the incredible work I'm doing, right? You can get bogged down in the day-to-day, as you said, things can be stressful, but when you talk about the incredible work that you're privileged enough to do, that fills my cup too.
Well, I guess one final thing I want to say about that is when you don't really get a chance to look at your life from the outside, right? Like Pam, maybe people have been inspired by you and watching your career, any other guests that we've had on, and you don't take stock, and maybe you don't get the chance to take stock, but other people have, and that is kind of like what they're chasing. And it's their dream to, be in that position of privilege. And you get to speak to them and you get to, maybe help them in some little way by just you giving them a couple minutes of your day.
That's right.
So, Pam, you have been so lovely. I have enjoyed this conversation so much. But before we wrap things up, anything big or small that you want to share with us that's happening at Breakthrough T1D or anything at all that you think our audience should hear about?
Well, at Breakthrough T1D, the first thing I'll say about at Breakthrough T1D, it is an incredible, we call it's a renaissance time in science. I feel so privileged to be here now because so much of the work the organization invested in decades ago is starting to come to fruition now. We've invested in years for cell therapies research, and a lot of that work that's in clinical trials, people are coming off of insulin. We see what's happening, which is so very exciting. And I just feel it's such a busy time, but I feel so fortunate to be here right now. I feel like this is an exciting time for us and the trajectory of the organization.
Pam, thank you so much for everything you've shared with us. I know our listeners will be learning a lot, probably taking notes, probably, looking things up and getting a lot of motivation from this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me on Impact After Hours.
Thank you, Camille. It was great talking with you.